Hello, and welcome to another lesson from Level Up Mathematics. In today's lesson, we will be solving real-world problems which require us to find either the part, the percent, or the whole. In other words, today all the problems will be mixed together. So in example 1, it says, read each scenario below and determine if you will need to find the part, the whole, or the percent. Circle the missing information you are solving for and set up a proportion, but do not solve it. So in scenario 1, it says on a random Friday in the spring, 88% of the students are present at school. If there are 528 students present, then how many total students are enrolled? So we know we're not finding the percent here because they gave us the percent, all right? And then if you'll look at the question, it kind of gives you a hint of what we're trying to find. It says how many total students are enrolled. So that means in this question, we're trying to find the whole or the total. So our proportion here would be percent, or 88 over 100, is equal to the part, which is 528, over the whole, which is our unknown. So in this problem, our unknown is the whole or the total. All right. Scenario 2. In a home run derby competition, there were 32 home runs out of 124 hits. Approximately what percent of hits were home runs? So in this problem, the question is what percent? So that means we are trying to find the percent. So here, our percent over 100, we do not know the percent. So it would be x over 100 equals to 32 over 124. All right, scenario 3. The Gonzalez family is out to dinner at their favorite restaurant. The bill comes to $32. How much money should they leave for a tip if they want to tip 20% of the total bill? Now, in this problem, they gave us the percent, so we're not looking for the percent. They also gave us the total bill, so we're not looking for the whole. In this problem, we're looking for the part. So our percent was 20 over 100. We do not know the part, but we know the total bill was $32. So there's your proportion. Now, let's get into actually doing some solving here. Let's look at example 2. 65% of the people who attended a concert had floor tickets. If 180 people attended the concert, then how many people had floor tickets? So let's try to identify the percent, the part, and the whole. All right. We know the percent is 65. Okay. Then we also know the total number of people that attended the concert. That was 180, so we know the whole. So in this problem, our unknown is our part. So our proportion would be 65 over 100 equals x over 180. So in this problem, it's really easy for me to see the scale factor is 1.8 because 180 divided by 100 is 1.8. So all I have to do is multiply the 65 by my scale factor of 1.8. So let's do that over here. 65 times 1.8. 5 times 8 is 40. 6 times 8 is 48, plus the 4 would be 52. Drop a 0. 1 times 5 is 5. 1 times 6 is 6. Add that up. And then very important that you remember the last step here. There's one number after the decimal, so we must move our decimal in one place. So 117 people had floor tickets. So you might have been tempted to answer 1,170, But that would not be a logical answer because they told us that only 180 people attended the concert. There's no way over 1,000 people could have had floor tickets because there were only 180 people total there. All right, so make sure your answer is logical. All right, example 3. A carnival sold 450 tickets on Saturday. The ticket sales showed that 270 of the tickets were adult tickets. What percent of the tickets sold on Saturday were adult tickets? So let's identify percent, part, whole. And then we'll set up our proportion. So we don't know the percent. So in this problem, that's our unknown, or x. Our part and our whole. Well, to me, it's easier to identify the whole first. So I know the total number of tickets sold was 450. So 270 must be my part. So we're trying to find out what percent of the tickets sold were adult tickets. So I'll say x over 100 equals 270 over 450. So here, I'm trying to go this way. 450, what is my scale factor? So I would have to divide 450 by 4.5 to get to 100. So that means I'm going to have to take 270 and divide it by 4.5. All right, so 270 divided by 4.5. Remember, your divisor must always be a whole number. So let's multiply both of these by 10 to make that 4.5 a whole number. So we're taking 2,700 and dividing it by 45. Now to do that, I'm going to come over here and use a ratio table to know how many times 45 will go in here. So if I have 1 times 45, that's 45. If I double that, that's 90. I'll double that again to get 180. I'm trying to get as close to 270 as I can. Now, if I double that again, that's going to give me 360. That is too many. But what if I added the 2 plus 4 would be 6? And what if I added the 90 plus 180? That would be 270. That's exactly what I'm looking for. So 45 will go into 270 6 times. So 6 times 45 is 270. Subtract and bring down. 45 goes into 0 times. So I know that 60% of the tickets sold on Saturday were adult tickets. All right, example 4. The Ferris wheel is the most popular ride at a carnival. Between the hours of 8 p.m. and 9 p.m., the Ferris wheel had 240 riders. If that was 60% of the total number of riders, then how many riders did the Ferris wheel have? All right, let's identify percent, part, whole. So I know our percent was 60%, and we do not know the total number of riders. So the whole is our unknown, or x, and our part was 240. So when I set up my proportion, 60 over 100 equals 240 over x. Now, I want to find my scale factor. What would I have to multiply to get to 60 to 240? And I'm thinking 60 times 4 would be 240. Let's check. 0 times 4 is 0. 4 times 6 is 24. So my scale factor is simply 4. So if I multiply 100 times 4, that means the Ferris wheel had a total of 400 total riders. 60% of them, or 240, rode between the hours of 8 and 9 p.m. All right, a high school band is made up of wind instrument players and the percussion. If there are 245 members who play wind instruments and 35 percussion members, then what percent of the marching band is percussion? So let's identify our percent, our part, and our whole. So the question said, what percent? So that means percent in this problem is our unknown. All right, now we're trying to find the percent that are percussion. So there are 35 percussion members, so that's our part. Now to get the whole, it's a little more complicated on this one. We have to add up the number of wind instrument players plus the number of percussion players to get our whole. So 5 plus 5 is 10, 5 and 3 is 8. So our whole here is 280. So sometimes they won't straight up and tell you what the whole is. You have to determine it yourself. All right, so when we set up our proportion, x over 100 equals 35 over 280. So I'm trying to find x, which means I need to know what would my scale factor be? What would I have to do to 35 to get x? So I need to figure out what's my scale factor going from 280 to 100. So I would have to divide by 2.8. So I'm going to take 35 and divide it by 2.8. But remember, our divisor must be a whole number. So I'm going to multiply both those by 10 so that I can have a whole number divisor. Then we will see how many times will 28 go into 350. So 28 goes into 35 one time. Let's see, and that would be 35 minus 28 would be a remainder of 7. Bring down the 0. 28 goes into 70. Let's see, 1 times 28. 2 would be 56. So I'm going to say it goes in 2 times. Then if I subtract that, I get 14. I'm going to have to add a decimal and bring down a 0. So let's see. If I doubled 56, doubled the 2 to get 4, doubled the 56, that would be 112. Ooh, what if I added the 1 and the 4 and the 28 and the 112? 1 plus 4 is 5. 112 plus 28, yeah, that would be 140. Nice. So I know that 28 will go into 140 5 times with the remainder of 0. So 12.5% of the band is percussion. And that concludes today's lesson on mixed practice with percents.